Good afternoon. My name is Ross Sutherland, and today on InSight we have Kirsten Strauss from the city of Salem. And you may notice that my sofa's a little bit narrower today. Wendy Brokaw is on special assignment and so won't be joining us today, but we're so happy to have Kirsten Strauss with us.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
So, Kirsten, you are the staff representative or staff assistant to the Historic Landmarks Commission.
Yeah.
And a lot of people may not know what the Historic Landmark Commission does and why the city of Salem has one.
Yeah. Well, we actually have over 600 historic properties in the city of Salem, and so the Historic Landmarks Commission helps oversee the restoration of those properties to make sure that they keep all of their cool features that they have about them.
Yeah.
So people who want to do projects with their historic buildings will bring them to the Historic Landmarks Commission, which is made up of professionals from across the industry, architects, designers, historic preservationists, and they kind of weigh in on whether that project that someone wants to do is going to be good for the historic building or not. So it's very cool.
And Salem is very lucky to have such an inventory of buildings because a lot of downtowns back in the 80s and I don't even know, even into the 90s, maybe the 60s through the 80s, were tearing down their historic downtowns and making them all brand new. And so you have places like, well, I won't name names, but Portland has been very good about that. But there's some other cities where the historic downtowns are a little bit more patchworky. And so we're very fortunate to have that.
Yeah, we're very lucky, and especially because our downtown historic district was nominated in 2001, which is relatively recent.
Wow.
So it's really lucky that all of those buildings in our really core area are still there and we can still see what they look like. So it's really cool.
And it isn't parking lots or strip malls or all of that, which have their place, but aren't in our downtown. So one of the places that people may have heard about the Historic Landmarks Commission is with the Chinese shrine in the Pioneer Cemetery. So give us the inside story on that.
Yeah, so my boss, the person I work with, is Kimberly Fitzgerald. She is the city archaeologist, and she did a project starting in 2017. It's been 2 years now, which is quite a long time. There was a newspaper article that we found that was showing, it was in 1963, and it was showing the then Parks Director kneeling in front of what looked like a Chinese funerary shrine. And he was kind of talking about how the Parks crew had cleaned it up and they had found it, and they were kind of like, what are these Chinese symbols on the front mean? So it was a pretty cool article.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And so based on that article, we wanted to see if we could find out where the shrine was because no one knew where it was anymore. Actually, after talking with someone who had seen the shrine when they were a kid, they remembered where it was, and we went to go look for it. And unfortunately, the only part that was left was just a little bit of concrete that was flush with the ground. And so Kimberly, she's the city archaeologist, she did a archaeology project to actually dig up the rest of the shrine, which was just right under the soil. It was only a few inches of soil on top of that concrete pad. And as part of that whole project, we developed an advisory committee, which is made up of people from the heritage community, people from the Chinese community, and we were able to sort of develop some interpretation about the shrine and learn more about it. And it's been a really cool project.
Yeah.
So.
And that's a really special cemetery. There's a number of African Americans that are buried there. And if you look, I mean, it's a very democratic cemetery. I mean, you have everybody from Asa Bush to unmarked graves. I mean, it's really wonderful, and it isn't sort of sectioned off like other cemeteries sometimes are.
Yeah, it's a very interesting place. I like that cemetery a lot.
That's great. Well, and another project you're currently working on is you call them wraps, which aren't like your sandwich wraps. They are plastic wraps that go on electric boxes around the city, and they're being used to interpret the history of the neighborhood or the street where they're located.
Yeah.
So, and where did this project get? I mean, where did the concept, the idea of putting historic preservation on electric boxes come from?
So we actually did a similar project. One of our other projects that the Historic Landmarks Commission does is our heritage neighborhood program.
Okay.
So we work with the different neighborhood. First we worked with the Grant neighborhood, and then we worked with the Cessna neighborhood. And the folks at the Cessna neighborhood actually wanted to do this along State Street. So there's a few of these panels that you'll see about different activities that happened in the Cessna neighborhood along State Street. And then we had an opportunity for another grant-funded project, which is this vinyl wrap project, and that's funded by the Oregon Cultural Association and the, I'm forgetting the name now, so I'll have to remember that later.
It wouldn't be the Oregon Heritage Commission, would
yes,
it?
it is the Oregon Heritage Commission.
Bing,
Thank
bing, bing,
you.
bing, bing.
And I was like, oh no, I can't remember the name.
I'll take historic preservation for 400.
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much for your funding. I appreciate it. So they actually funded this project, which we took some electrical boxes around town. There's some downtown. There's one on Mission Street, and there's one in the cemetery about the Chinese shrine, actually.
Perfect.
And we're able to take these electrical boxes and wrap them with a vinyl material that is, it's graffiti resistant, and it's pretty long lasting, and it has printouts of all of these cool photos and historic information about the area where that box is located.
In English and Spanish.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, and in Chinese even.
Oh, in Chinese. Okay, for the cemetery.
For the cemetery, and we also have a cool one. I'm showing this picture of the Salem's Chinatown panel right here, and this is talking about where Chinatown used to be in downtown Salem. We've got a photo of George Lai's son in his shop, which was actually located right across the street from where this panel is located, which is really very cool. And this is translated into Chinese for folks who can read Chinese. So,
well, and it's
cool.
really exciting that history is really broadening, where it used to be kind of the big politicians, the major players and all of this stuff, and kind of the community history, the neighborhood history, and the personal history was kind of overlooked, and now it's really really getting it's a day of its own. So
yeah, this has been a really great project for learning kind of. There's some like larger topics, I would say, like the theater panel. This is a pretty big topic. People know a lot about theaters in Salem.
They're very visible and everything.
But we've got some really cool photos of signs that don't exist anymore. Blythe's Capitol Theater is actually demolished, so it's kind of a chance for people to learn a little bit more about what used to be there. But we also have some smaller topics about like this public amusement in Salem panel is about sort of like what people do for fun downtown. So we've got a mention of the World Beat Festival, we've got a mention of the Salem Riverfront Carousel, but we also talk about the history of parades in downtown Salem and how there used to be a lot of parades every year. There was like a Cherry Fest parade, there was a 4th of July parade, there was a Christmas parade, so
and there was a horse, is this the horse, that's a victory parade. There's one where they have horses all over town.
There's a horse parade, yeah. There's all kinds of parades, which I'm always pretty fascinated by. This one's a circus parade, so there's a zebra in the photo, so we've got all kinds of fun things. Oh, this one is just great. This is a baby parade that was part of the Cherry Festival. And so they would just have, like everyone who had a kid, they would have the babies like pushed in little strollers down the street. It was
and
really cute.
They go all out for the floats and all of that. It's not just, like, a little hot glue here and a tissue paper.
There was a lot to see. So that's just kind of what that panel features. It's just what fun things you can do.
That's great. Well, and there's a story of Bush's Pasture Park where the circus in the lower part of the park, they used to be there kind of because they'd come to town and they, what are you going to do with all these elephants and all this stuff? And they would be in the lower part of Bush's Pasture Park where kind of east of McCullough Stadium.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that. That's so cool.
So that's a lot of fun.
I love that.
So what are some of the other topics that you've looked at?
So we've got two about Chinese history in Salem. We've got the theater history. Another fun one that we did is Salem's moving past. So we were able to feature a few different organizations on one panel that talks about buildings that have moved from place to place in Salem. So
now, where's this one located?
This is located right in front of, I believe it's the Executive Building now downtown, which used to be the post office.
Yes, until, that's... Yeah, and if you don't know that, it's the white 1930s marble building, and what is now Gatke Hall used to be there, which is insane.
Yeah, it used to be the post office, so that was one of the most fun things actually to learn about this topic is that when they were moving Gatkey Hall, which used to be the post office before the building that used to be the post office is there now.
Can you say that again?
I know, right? It actually took months and months for them to move Gatkey Hall down State Street. It only had to move like 3 or 4 blocks, but it took months and months and months.
It's a stone building.
Yeah, because they rolled it on like logs, and it took forever, and people would like get really angry about it, and there was like a newspaper update every couple of weeks. It's like, it's moved a few more feet today.
Oh my gosh.
It was really quite funny to see some of those newspaper articles.
Which is wonderful, because sometimes when you look at old pictures of the city, you go, wait a minute, how did that building get over here?
I know.
And it's like,
yeah.
and some of the other buildings that are moved, a Little Gem, which is now down at AC Gilbert House Children's Museum.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then some of the ones going to the Willamette Heritage Center.
Yep. Yeah. So we've got Willamette Heritage Center, like the Jason Lee House, and then you've got this really fun photo of the J.L. Parrish House getting stuck under a bridge on its way to move to the A.C. Gilbert House or Children's House Museum. So
that is so much
very
fun.
cool.
And what is that one at the top?
This is
the Jason Lee House.
Yeah, this is the Jason Lee House on its way.
And that's a really amazing story, because the Jason Lee House, 1840s, it's over on Broadway, which is right next to that sign that has the beaver on it that says Salem began here.
Yeah.
And over the years, it sort of had been like encrusted with all this Victorian architecture and all this and that. And when there were plans to tear it down, somebody wisely said, wait a minute, Jason Lee's house is in there.
I know.
So they rip off all this stuff, and lo and behold, there it is.
I know.
So.
It looks much different when it was sort of in situ than when it does now.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting to think about how those changes occurred over time.
Yeah.
So it's a really cool building. And you can see it today at the Willamette Heritage Center.
Yeah, which is amazing.
That's very cool.
So, and then of course,
your favorite one, I'm sure.
Yeah, do I have to claim, what is that where they say I have to make a statement that I did help work on this one? Yeah, whatever that. They're always doing that. So yes, this is the history of Mission Street with the Bush family, Lord and Scriver and Deepwood. So, and that's Bush's Pasture Park. And,
yep. This was a cool one. I feel like the photos of the garden are some of the most beautiful photos that we have.
Yeah,
so
and the aerial
so cool.
view of Deepwood, that's not a view, I think, who's credited for that? Ron Cooper, yes, who used to be the photographer for The Statesman for many, many years.
Yeah, he's got a lot of really beautiful photos of the whole park.
Yeah, and then what is the one with the baskets on it?
So this is our Indigenous History, Pam, and it's talking about the Indigenous history of the area, which is the Santiam Kalapuya. This is their ancestral homeland. And we feature several different baskets, both from the collection from the Grand Ronde and also from Hallie Ford Museum, because they've got a lot of really cool baskets in their collection as well. So.
Yes, and those are on view. You can go to the Hallie Ford and see those.
Yeah, so you can see some of the baskets that they have there, and then they actually have a really cool modern Indigenous art collection as well, so it's definitely worth checking out.
Nice balance.
And
well, and we at Bush's Pasture Park have the camas field that blooms every spring, and that is just, I mean, it's like, you know, it's just a sea of beautiful purple flowers that the Kalapuya would dig up and eat the camas bulb, I should mention. You know, the connection. The other thing that's really interesting about this in terms of culture is that these are baskets that remain from the culture as opposed to buildings. And I know that they did do some building, but a lot of their life was very, what do I want to say? It didn't last in like buildings.
Transitional, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
things
they went from place to place, and
very nomadic.
Salem is known as a gathering place for a lot of different people from the area, where they would come to trade goods and they would trade information. So it's one of the reasons why Salem is such an important area in the history of the Northwest in general. So.
Yes. Well. And it was known as Shemeketa, the early gathering place for the native people. And so, yes.
And this one's really cool. So this one's just a draft, but the final version will actually have everything translated into Kalapuya, which is really cool. I just got that final draft today, actually. So this should be.
So are you editing it?
Yeah. Well, I'm not editing the Kalapuya. I can't do that. But
and Chinese and.
We have lots of talented individuals who will help for that part. But
so that's wonderful.
yeah, so that'll be installed soon, and it will have all of this really cool information and all of the information translated into Kalapuya, which is a really unique and cool opportunity, I think.
That's
so I'm excited about that.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
And so tell us, the Historic Landmarks Commission is never sits still. They are working on a new plan to lay out some new goals and some new programming and different kinds of things. So tell us about that and the process and how that's going.
So beginning in 2010, actually, excuse me, Kimberly worked with the Historic Landmarks Commission and a lot of people all around the city to work a historic preservation plan for Salem, which really details what kind of projects require historic design review, what kind of projects the Historic Landmarks Commission wants to pursue, what kind of educational programs they want to do. And
I should mention, it's also, the city really streamlines the projects. This isn't this big bureaucratic monster. They really want to work with citizens to make sure that this is not an onerous process for people.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the first parts from this whole project, actually, is that we're looking for feedback. We're going to be sending out a survey here in the next week with information. We're asking everybody to sort of tell us what they like about the program, what they don't like about the program, if they have suggestions, what kind of things they like about the history of Salem and how we could better incorporate that into our programming. So we're really hoping to try to get to hear from lots of people for this whole project, and then after we do the survey, that's sort of phase one of the project. We're going to move into phase two, which is like sort of tabling events for people. So we'll go out and ask people for feedback in the community. And then once we feel like we've got a good level of conversation going with the public, we'll be actually to kind of evaluate all of that information and then roll it all into a new historic preservation plan, or not necessarily a new one, an update of our
the existing one, because some of the principles don't change.
Yeah, but we'll look at what kind of educational programming that people want to see more of is going to be a big part of it. If there's anything about the historic design review process that people feel could be better, then we want to try to work to make that happen for folks, because it should be a pleasure to have a historic home. You know, there's some hardships that can go along with preserving and owning a home, but we want to try to be a resource and a helpful entity for people when it comes to doing that kind of work.
Which is why neighborhoods stay, maintain their historic integrity, and they're beautiful, and you go by and you go, wow, you know.
So we're happy to provide support, and we are excited to hear from people about the program. So
okay, so where can people get a hold of you if they have ideas about historic preservation or the Landmarks Commission?
Well, you can always check out our website. It's thecityofsalem.net, and we're going to have our own page for the Historic Preservation Plan update. So I don't think that URL is finalized yet, but maybe we can finalize it.
And there's also the monthly Historic Landmarks Commission meetings, which happen.
Those happen on the third Thursday of every month. And those start at 5:30, and they are at the City Council chambers.
Well, great. And those are open to everyone.
Yes, open to the public. We encourage you to come. Not only do we have our historic design reviews, we also have usually like a historic preservation officer report where we talk about what kind of things are going on and all kinds of other fun stuff to talk about. So they're pretty good meetings, and I usually bring snacks. So.
Oh, I'm there. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And we'll look forward to that report from the Historic Landmarks Commission. So thanks to Kirsten Strauss from the City of Salem, and I'm Ross Sutherland with InSight, and we look forward to Wendy returning from her special project in the coming weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Ross. I appreciate it.